Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. This is going to be my January wrap-up video, and I just want to go ahead and say if you hear any screaming or yelling in the background, that would be my kids sledding right outside my window. So they're outside having fun. I'm not going to pull them in and tell them to be quiet just so I can film. So if you hear that, I apologize, but they're just having a whole lot of fun, and I don't blame them. I read 11 books in January. I'm surprised. I was not expecting to read that much. I don't know exactly how I did it, but I did. And so it was a really good reading month for me. I want to say that that's not average, but I don't know. This is actually my first year keeping track of how many books I read, and so I just really surprised myself with the amount I read, and I don't feel like I really rushed through them, so I don't know. It was just really good, and I'm really happy with it. I don't know if I'll read that much this coming month, but we'll see. So yeah, let me just get into those and show them to you since there's so many I have to talk about. I'm going to try not to make this like 30 minutes long. The first book, and these are in no particular order of what I read them during the month, so just so you know. But the first book is City of Thieves by David Benioff. This was one of the best books I read this month. I definitely recommend this. This takes place in World War II during the siege of Leningrad, and it's about these two guys who are tasked with finding a dozen eggs in order to save their life, pretty much. And this was just, it was really good. The characters are really well done. I sort of fell in love with Kolya a little bit, one of the characters in here, and I don't know, he was just really lovable and optimistic and like arrogant and but good. Like, I liked him a lot. He was a good guy. But yeah, this book was really good, and I definitely recommend it, especially if you're wanting to get back into historical fiction or you're interested in World War II. I, for one, really like this book because I didn't know, I still don't know that much about Russia's involvement with World War II. I'm just not well versed in a whole lot of World War II stuff. I mean, I feel like I know the basics, but I was not aware of the siege of Leningrad, that's for sure. So, I mean, that definitely opened up my mind to that and got me sort of Googling and poking around. So it's always nice when a book can lead you to do that sort of thing. And I gave this 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. It was a really good book. The next book is The Lost Art of Reading Nature Signs by Tristan Gooley, and it says on the front right here, use outdoor clues to find your way, predict the weather, locate water, track animals, and other forgotten skills. This is definitely something that's going to stay on my shelf, and I will probably reference it many times in the coming days, weeks, months, and years. But this was really good, a really handy book if you're interested in learning to navigate outside and look around for different clues. I really like the conversational tone in here that he's teaching you, but he's not talking down to you. Like, it literally feels like Tristan Gooley is just sitting right next to you and just chatting like, hey, you know, when you see this, this is probably what this means, and you can deduce this from this. And that's what I really love, is being able to zero in on something that seems really inconsequential, but it actually can give you a whole wealth of information. And a lot of this focuses on navigation by stars and where the sun's at and how plants are even growing on trees and on rocks and stuff. So I really like this. So if you're an outdoorsy type person or you're interested in learning more about that kind of stuff, I definitely recommend this. Alright, the next one is The Time Traveler's Wife by Audrey Niffenegger, and I really enjoyed this book. I picked it up, not really, I was just kind of like, maybe I'll like it, I'm gonna give it a shot, because I wasn't really interested in picking it up, but I'm glad that I did. It was really good and heartbreaking, and the last 50 or so pages of the book was read in the bathtub for me, and I just sort of locked the door and cried for the last 50 or so pages. So yeah, I mean, if a book could make you cry, it's pretty dang good. I really like this, and it's just about a man who, I like that they put it, the author put it as a genetic sort of mutation, but genetically he's, that's the reason why he is able to time travel. It's a genetic mutation. So he time travels But, you know, he is in love with this woman and marries her, and it's sort of about, goes back and forth between their relationship and point of views and how that all works out with a time traveling husband, and it's just much better than I thought it was going to be. So if you want to read about a love story and you want to cry a little bit too, then I would read this. The next book you'll probably recognize from my library book haul. I was able to squeeze this in and I finished it over the weekend, and that is The Shining by Stephen King. This book was really good. It was really good. I have no regrets about reading it. The only issue I had with this book is it wasn't scary enough for me. I mean, it was really creepy. There were definitely some creepy scenes in it and disturbing, you know, visually disturbing stuff. But it wasn't as scary as Pet Sematary to me. That book of his is really terrifying. But this one was still good. It was still pretty good. I gave it 4 stars. Stephen King is a really good storyteller, and I really like how well he does his characters. You really get inside their head and you get all the grittiness, you know, not just all the good stuff, but I mean, and not like, you know, rose-colored bad stuff either, like, oh, here's some bad, but they're still really good. No, people are real in here, and I like that he crawls inside people's heads and brings out all that awful stuff that people just keep to themselves, so you get to read about it in fictional characters' minds. The next book I read, I actually started several months ago, I think back in November, but I finished it. I finished like the last 400 pages or so in January, and that is Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. I don't have a physical copy because I read it on my Kindle app on my phone. It's what I would read at night when I wanted to be in bed but I needed help falling asleep. Not that it's a boring book at all. It was my 3rd reading of it. I really enjoy Gone with the Wind. If you aren't familiar with it, it's a classic, and it's set in Civil War, and it's just really a story of survival about this woman who is a Southern belle, you know, turned, I mean, gritty survivor. Scarlett O'Hara, I'm sure that name rings a bell. And yeah, it's just really good. It's a favorite of mine. I'll probably read it again. I have no idea why I don't own a physical copy, because I need to, because I just really like the book. The next one I don't have a physical copy of either, because I returned it to the library, but it was a read aloud for me and my kids, and that was The Wizard of Oz. I think that's the title. The Wizard of Oz. You'll know what I'm talking about anyways, by L. Frank Baum. I didn't really like it that much. I mean, it was okay. My kids liked it, and that's what's important, because it's not a book written really for me, for someone my age, although people my age probably really like it. I just don't. It was okay. It was okay. I would buy it though just for the illustrations, because the illustrations in the book, or the edition that the library had, were beautiful. But my kids really enjoyed it. And if you aren't familiar with the story, it's about a girl who gets transported like in a cyclone from her home in Kansas into this magical world. And so, yeah, and then there's like all sorts of magical creatures and good witches and bad witches and half tiger bear things. And then, you know, you got the Scarecrow and the Tin Man and yeah, yada yada, all that stuff. It was okay. My kids liked it though, so what can I say? The next book, and I'm going to have to look at my phone here because I can't remember the author's name, is one that belongs to the library too, but that is The Woman in the Moon and Other Tales of Forgotten Heroines by James Riordan. And that was just a book of short stories. And I really, really like this book. I gave it 5 stars. But it's just a collection of short stories, and it's all centered around women who are their own heroes or are the heroes of the story. You know, I think in the beginning of the book it said, you know, not your typical Cinderella or Sleeping Beauty Disney princess type stuff. I mean, these were really good stories. I read some of them a lot to my kids. I didn't read all of them, but I did read the book myself, and I really enjoyed it. Some of the stories, I mean, they made me smile and chuckle to myself. If I didn't mention it, these aren't modern stories. These are actually folk tales that were pulled, like, I mean, older ones from, you know, how Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty are old fairy tales. These are ones too that just aren't told, or they've been forgotten, that really celebrate women and the strength that they have and how they can be their own heroes. So I really enjoyed that. The next book that I read was Wild Sex by Dr. Karen Bondar. Okay, so this is a nonfiction book, and it just is a sort of a scientific book. It was kind of dense in the academic side of it. I thought it would be more conversational, and some of it was kind of boring and I skimmed through, but then there were gems in there that were just really interesting, so it was worth it to read still for me. But this is just about how we as people really have an easy time finding a partner and procreating with them, but how animals, you know, how so many of them do it differently and how much harder it can be, just in general, you know, down to the tiniest little flies, how much more complex their mating rituals are, and finding a mate and procreating and having babies. She also talks about how we as people, genetically and on a biological level, how we do ourselves a disservice by covering up our smells with soap and deodorants and putting on makeup, because if we didn't use all those things, basically we would, I'm not doing this justice, but basically it'd be easier for us to find a good genetic match, and we would be attracted to a more appropriate person for us genetically, biologically, to produce the healthiest offspring. But how that doesn't get to happen as much because we're blocking our pheromones, our natural scents that speak to us on a subconscious level and let us know if the person we're talking to is a good potential mate. And then also covering up physical attributes too, you know, with makeup and products and things. Not that I'm saying anybody should stop doing that. I just thought that's really interesting on a scientific level, and it rings true. I mean, it makes complete sense. So I really like this. If you're interested in animal science and wild sex, sounds like a title you would want to pick up and read, then I do recommend it, because I did gain some valuable information, interesting information that I'm interested in from this book. The next book that I read was Redwall by Brian Jacques. I think that's how you pronounce his name. I'm just going to keep messing up his name, you guys, because I've said this in other videos, and I'm butchering his last name probably, and I apologize. I still haven't looked it up. But I read these when I was in middle school, and I really enjoyed them. So it was fun to revisit this book. I won't say I didn't enjoy it as much, but obviously it's written more for that audience, so it wasn't as fantastic to me as it once was, but it was still good. This was a comforting read for me, and if you aren't familiar with this series of books, it's about mice and rats and rabbits and things like that. And this one in particular is about Redwall Abbey, and it comes under attack from a rat, kind of like a rat pirate king guy. And so this is just kind of sort of a back and forth with battles and stuff, and they're trying to defend their abbey, and then there's this unlikely little mouse warrior that steps up to the plate, and, you know, he vanquishes the evil rats, and these stories are really predictable. I mean, you know how they're going to end up. Like, all the books are basically like that. But these are just really good and comforting, and if you like reading these types of books, then I would pick this up, because I really enjoyed it, and I plan to pass it on to my kids, because I think that they will really like this when they get to the age that they can enjoy it. Okay, I apologize. My camera cut off, so if anything looks different or weird, that's why. So, anyways, another book that I read, and I know I'm not done yet, in January was Eva by Peter Dickinson, and that was a really good book. What that was about was a girl, and this is set in like future times when science has progressed beyond what we have now, but she wakes up from a coma because she got in an accident and her body was destroyed. So when she wakes up, she realizes that she's no longer in her body. She is in a chimpanzee's body, but her mind or consciousness has been transported into this chimp's body. And so the story just centers around her refinding out who she is and trying to straddle this line between being a human or an ape, and, you know, how much do those intersect? And, you know, is she still a person? Is she an ape? And what does that mean, you know, for the other apes? It was a really interesting read. I read it very quickly, and it, you know, I thought, okay, you know, that was really good. Didn't really think much about it. Beyond, you know, finishing it, it was a really good book. But then it was several days later when I was pondering it, and I actually started crying because I really started to think about, you know, what if we reached that point, you know, and I was really looking at it too from her mother's perspective, which, you know, she's in the book, but she's not a huge presence in the book. And I thought it would be really interesting to read a book from a parent's perspective, trying to decide how they want to move on with their child in an ape's body, or even coming to that decision. I don't know, it just really broke my heart. Like, when you really get down to the bones of it, it's really got to be like so messed up and heartbreaking. And so yeah, I've thought a lot about it a lot since reading it. And it's just one of those mind screwy books that are really good, but they stay with you, you know. So yeah. Alright, so I think that's all the books, or almost all the books. I think I only have one left to talk with you about. I hope I'm not forgetting any. If I am, I'm not going to make a separate video about it. I'll just put it below in the description. But the last book that I read this month, I don't have a physical copy of. I had to buy it for the Kindle and then read it on my phone because my Kindle's broken, which that really killed me to do because I really don't like reading on Kindles or books or e-readers. I mean, Kindles and e-readers and stuff and on the phone. But anyways, the last book that I read that I want to talk with you about was The Fox and the Hound by Daniel P. Mannix. And this book was not 5 stars. This book was 10 stars. It was 15 stars. It was 20 stars. It was infinity stars. This was hands down the best book that I read this month. And I have a feeling it'll be one of the best books that I will read this year in 2017. It's, what kills me about it is it's no longer in print. I mean, it's not getting published anymore. So it's really hard to find a physical copy of this book, and when you do, they're pretty expensive. So it kills me that I can't own this book, or at least not right now. I can't. And it kills me that they aren't still printing this book, because this is a book that needs to be read. It should not be forgotten. If you're familiar with Disney's version of The Fox and the Hound, this is pretty much completely different. This is not a Disney book. It says on Goodreads that it's a children's book. I don't really understand that. It's definitely not like a small children's book. Maybe for older kids, I guess. But it's dark and just heartbreaking, and there's not, you know, really, you don't really get a break. There's not really any happiness in this book, and I know I'm not really selling it well, but it's so good. It's one of the most beautiful books I've ever read. So yeah, it switches back and forth between the perspective of a fox and a hound, and in the book they are not friends. If you've seen the movie, they're friends, but they are not friends. And it's sort of like opposing worlds, but then they're sort of united in the end by this progressing world that neither the hunting hound or the fox no longer fit in. I would say it was more heartbreaking for me than Old Yeller or Where the Red Fern Grows. I mean, it was a pretty sad book. One of the main things that I liked about this book was that it kept to the true nature of the dog and the fox itself. And you really see the world from their perspective and through scent. The author did such a good job writing this and really helping you to see through, not through their eyes, but through their nose. Because for animals, you know, their world, a lot of animals, their world is scent. It's not vision based. And I mean, the author did a phenomenal job with that. And helping you see from the scent perspective of an animal. I mean, that he was able to do that is phenomenal. I mean, it's magical. So yeah, I'm going to stop talking about it, you know, because I feel like right now I'm just repeating myself. It was a really good book, the best book that I read this month, probably the best book that I will read this year. Highly, highly recommend The Fox and the Hound by Daniel P. Mannix. And so yeah, those were all the books that I managed to read in January. Really good reading month for me. If you have read any of these, let me know below and what you think about the books that I read. And tell me what you're reading coming up in February. Thank you guys so much for watching and bearing with me through this long wrap up. Hopefully I can edit it down a little bit. But yeah, I will see you guys next time. My eye is itching. But yeah, I will see you guys next time, okay? Have a good day.